Husband forced me to be a housewife and gave me an allowance. Turns out he was funding his double life with multiple women. I, 28F, have been married to Stephen, 32M, for 3 years. We met at a company picnic 5 years ago through our mutual friend, Caleb, 30M. Caleb worked with Stephen and knew I was single at the time. He introduced us, thinking we might hit it off. Stephen was charming and successful, working as a senior software engineer at a well-known tech company. I was impressed by his confidence and the way he could easily talk about complex topics. At the time, I was working as a middle school English teacher. I loved my job, especially the moments when I could see a student's face light up with understanding. Stephen seemed genuinely interested in my work, asking questions about my teaching methods and the challenges I faced in the classroom. Our relationship moved quickly. We had our first date a week after the picnic, and from then on, we were practically inseparable. Stephen was attentive and romantic, always planning thoughtful dates and surprising me with small gifts. Within 6 months, we had moved in together, and a year later, he proposed during a weekend trip to the beach. The wedding was beautiful, everything I had dreamed of. My parents, John, 58M, and Linda, 55F, were thrilled. They saw Stephen as the perfect son-in-law, successful, charming, and from a good family. My best friend, Lisa, 29F, was my maid of honor. She was happy for me but cautioned me about moving too fast. I brushed off her concerns, convinced that Stephen and I were meant to be. The first year of our marriage was great. We both worked hard during the week and spent our weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, or having game nights with friends. We talked about our future, including our plans to start a family someday. Things started to change around our first anniversary. Stephen began talking more and more about wanting to start a family. He'd bring it up casually at first, asking if I'd thought about baby names or what kind of parent I wanted to be. I was hesitant. I loved my job and didn't feel ready for children yet. We agreed to wait a bit longer, but Stephen kept bringing it up. Around this time, I also noticed changes in how we handled our finances. Previously, we had separate accounts and a joint account for household expenses. Stephen suggested we consolidate everything into joint accounts for better financial planning. I agreed, thinking it made sense for a married couple. However, soon after, Stephen started questioning my spending habits. He'd ask about small purchases, like a coffee with a coworker or a new book. He suggested I cut back on these unnecessary expenses so we could save more for our future family. At first, I didn't think much of it. Stephen had always been more financially savvy than me, and I thought he was just being cautious. The pressure to quit my job started about 18 months into our marriage. Stephen argued that with his salary, there was no need for me to work. He painted a picture of me as a stay-at-home mom, taking care of our future children and managing the household. When I expressed doubts, he'd say things like, "Don't you want to be there for every moment of our children's lives?" Or "My mom stayed home with me, and I turned out great, didn't I?" I tried to explain that I loved my job and wasn't ready to give it up. Teaching wasn't just a paycheck for me, it was a passion. I told him about the student who had been struggling all year but finally grasped the difficult concept, or the shy kid who found their voice through a class project. But Stephen seemed dismissive of these stories, saying that while teaching was noble, raising our own children should be my priority. After months of discussions and arguments, I reluctantly agreed to quit my job. Stephen promised we'd start trying for a baby soon, and I hoped this would improve our relationship. I gave notice at my school, and my colleagues threw me a goodbye party. I remember feeling a mix of sadness and anxiety as I packed up my classroom for the last time. Once I stopped working, Stephen's controlling behavior escalated. He gave me an allowance for personal expenses, insisting that this was the best way to manage our budget. He wanted receipts for everything I bought and would question any purchase he deemed unnecessary. When I brought up my discomfort with this arrangement, he accused me of being ungrateful and reminded me that he was supporting us financially. I started to feel isolated and lost. Most of my friends were still working, and I felt uncomfortable explaining my situation to them. I spent my days at home, trying to find purpose in household chores and meal planning. I missed the energy of the classroom and the sense of accomplishment I got from teaching. I tried to talk to Stephen about going back to work, but he always had reasons why it wasn't a good idea. The job market is tough right now, he'd say, or we're going to start trying for babies soon anyway, so what's the point? I felt trapped and increasingly dependent on Stephen. Things came to a head last week. I was cleaning our home office when I accidentally knocked over a stack of papers on Stephen's desk. As I was picking them up, I noticed a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at it more closely. I was shocked to see a balance much higher than what Stephen had told me we had in savings. When Stephen got home, I confronted him about the statement. He initially got angry, accusing me of snooping through his things. But when I pressed him, he admitted that he had been hiding money in a separate account that I didn't know about. He claimed it was for our future and that he didn't trust me to be responsible with money. I was hurt and betrayed. All this time, I thought we were partners, making decisions together. But Stephen had been lying to me and controlling our finances without my knowledge. I realized that I had no idea what our true financial situation was. Now, I don't know what to do. I feel trapped in this marriage with no job, no savings of my own, and a husband who doesn't trust me. I'm considering leaving, but the thought of starting over with nothing is terrifying. I don't even know if I could get my teaching job back after being out of the workforce for a while. I tried talking to my parents about the situation, but they think I'm overreacting. My mom said, all couples have disagreements about money. You should be grateful that Stephen is such a good provider. My dad added, he's just trying to secure your future. You should trust his judgment. On the other hand, when I told Lisa about what was happening, she was furious. She said Stephen's behavior was financial abuse and urged me to leave him immediately. You're smart and capable, Sarah, she told me. You don't need a man who treats you like a child. I'm torn between these conflicting pieces of advice. Part of me still loves Stephen and wants to believe we can fix this. We've built a life together, and the thought of throwing it all away is heartbreaking. But another part of me feels betrayed and wants out. I'm tired of feeling controlled and undervalued. I keep thinking about my students and the lessons I taught them about self-respect and standing up for themselves. Am I being a hypocrite by staying in this situation? Or am I giving up too easily on my marriage? I don't know what the right decision is. Should I try to salvage this marriage? Is there a way to regain trust and equality in our relationship? Or should I leave and try to rebuild my life on my own? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Thank you all for your advice and support on my last post. The past 2 weeks have been intense, and I wanted to give you an update on what's happened. After reading your comments and doing some research, I realized that Stephen's behavior was indeed financial abuse. I decided to confront him about it and demand changes in our relationship. I spent a day preparing what I wanted to say, writing down key points so I wouldn't get flustered during the conversation. When Stephen got home from work, I sat him down and told him we needed to talk. I explained how his controlling behavior made me feel trapped, undervalued, and disrespected. I told him I wanted to go back to work and have equal say in our finances. I also demanded full transparency about our financial situation. To my surprise, Stephen seemed receptive. He apologized for his behavior and promised to do better. He said he hadn't realized how his actions were affecting me and that he wanted to make things right. For a few days, things seemed to improve. Stephen gave me access to all our accounts, including the hidden one, and supported my decision to look for a job. He even offered to help update my resume. I started to feel hopeful that we could work things out. I began looking for teaching positions and reached out to some of my old colleagues to see if they knew of any openings. I also started going through our finances, trying to get a clear picture of our situation. However, things took an unexpected turn when I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice asked, "Is this Sarah, Stephen's wife?" My stomach dropped as she continued, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm pregnant with Stephen's child." The woman, who introduced herself as Rachel, said she and Stephen had been having an affair for the past year. According to her, Stephen had promised to leave me and start a new life with her. She said she was calling because Stephen had stopped responding to her messages and she wanted to know what was going on. I was in shock. I thanked Rachel for telling me and ended the call. Then I sat on the trying to process what I just learned. When Stephen got home, I confronted him immediately. At first, he denied everything, accusing Rachel of lying. But when I told him I would contact Rachel for more details, he broke down and admitted to the affair. Stephen begged me for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake and that he wanted to make our marriage work. He claimed Rachel meant nothing to him and that he had ended things with her when he realized how much he was risking. I was devastated. Not only had Stephen been controlling and lying about our finances, but he had also been cheating on me. All the trust one had in him was completely shattered. I thought about all the times he had questioned my spending or my whereabouts, and I realized he had been projecting his own infidelity onto me. In the midst of this chaos, I decided to do some more digging into our finances. Remember the hidden account I mentioned in my last post? Well, I went through the transactions and found something that made me sick. Stephen had been using that money to fund his affair with Rachel. There were charges for expensive restaurants, weekend getaways, and even jewelry stores. All this time, he had been pinching pennies at home while lavishing money on his mistress. I confronted Stephen about this too, and he couldn't deny it. He broke down crying, saying he had made a huge mistake and would do anything to fix our marriage. He offered to go to couples therapy, give me complete control of our finances, whatever it took to regain my trust. But I don't know if I can ever trust him again. The man I thought I knew and loved has turned out to be a liar and a cheater. I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down. I've moved out of our house and am staying with Lisa for now. She's been incredibly supportive, offering me a safe place to stay and a shoulder to cry on. Stephen keeps calling and texting, begging for another chance. He's promising therapy, complete financial transparency, and says he'll do whatever it takes to save our marriage. My parents are still pushing me to work things out with Stephen. When I told them about the affair, my mom said, "Men make mistakes, Sarah. If he's truly sorry, you should give him another chance." My dad added, "Think about your future. Do you really want to throw away your marriage over one indiscretion?" Their words make me doubt myself. Am I being too hasty in leaving? Should I give Stephen another chance to prove he can change? Lisa and most of my friends think I should divorce him immediately. Lisa pointed out that Stephen has shown a pattern of deception, and there's no guarantee he won't do it again. My old colleague, Emily, reminded me of how much I love teaching and said this could be an opportunity to reclaim my career and independence. I'm torn between my feelings for the man I thought Stephen was and the reality of who he actually is. Part of me wants to believe he can change, that we can rebuild our marriage stronger than before. But another part feels like too much damage has been done. How can I ever trust him after so many lies? I've started looking into divorce lawyers just to understand my options. But I haven't made any definitive decisions yet. I keep thinking about the life I thought we were building together and wondering if it was all a lie. What should I do? Is there any coming back from this level of betrayal? Or should I cut my losses and start over on my own? Has anyone been in a similar situation and managed to rebuild trust? Or is it better to make a clean break? Any advice would be appreciated as I try to navigate this difficult situation. Update 2: It's been a month since my last update, and I wanted to share what's happened since then. After much soul-searching and many conversations with friends and family, I decided to file for divorce. The betrayal and lies were too much to overcome, and I realized I couldn't trust Stephen again. When I told Stephen about my decision, he didn't take it well. He alternated between begging me to reconsider and getting angry, accusing me of throwing away our marriage. He brought up all the good times we had together and promised he would change. But I stood my ground, remembering all the advice I'd received from you and my friends. As I started the divorce process, I uncovered even more of Stephen's deceptions. It turns out the affair with Rachel wasn't a one-time thing or even a year-long affair. Stephen had been cheating on me with multiple women throughout our entire marriage. I found evidence of at least 3 other women he had been involved with. There were hotel receipts, secret email accounts, and even a hidden phone. It was like discovering a whole other life that Stephen had been living behind my back. One of the other women, Amanda, reached out to me after finding out about the divorce. She told me she had been seeing Stephen on and off for 2 years, and he had told her he was separated. I thanked her for her honesty and asked if she would be willing to provide a statement for my divorce proceedings if needed. She agreed, saying she felt terrible for her part in the deception. The most shocking revelation came when I found out that Stephen had a 6-year-old son from a previous relationship that he had never told me about. I discovered this when I found regular payments to a woman named Olivia in our bank statements. When I confronted Stephen about it, he finally admitted that he had a child from a brief relationship before we met. He had been paying child support in secret all this time. I was floored. How could I have been so blind to all of this? I thought back to all the times Stephen had to work late or go on business trips. All the times he was distant or distracted. It all made now. When confronted with all this evidence, Stephen finally broke down and admitted everything. He said he had a sex addiction and had been struggling with it for years. He begged me to give him another chance, saying he would get help and change. But for me, it was too late. The Stephen the first thought I knew never existed. Our entire relationship had been built on lies and deception. I couldn't help but think about all the times he made me feel guilty for small purchases or for wanting to maintain my independence, all while he was spending money on his affairs and secret child. The divorce process has been messy. Stephen is now trying to claim that I knew about his affairs and was okay with them, which is completely false. He's also trying to hide assets to avoid a fair settlement. He's arguing that since I wasn't working, I'm not entitled to much of our marital assets. Thankfully, I have a good lawyer who is fighting for my rights. We've managed to uncover most of Stephen's hidden assets, including some investments he never told me about. It looks like I'll be getting a fair settlement, which will give me the financial cushion I need to restart my life. Through all of this, I've learned a valuable lesson about the importance of financial independence. I've started a new job as a teacher again, thanks to a recommendation from my old principal. It feels great to be back in the classroom and earning my own money. My parents finally came around after I showed them evidence of Stephen's multiple affairs and hidden child. They apologized for pushing me to stay with him and have been supportive of my decision to divorce. My mom even offered to let me move back home while I get back on my feet, but I decided to stay with Lisa for now. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I know I made the right decision in leaving. It's been hard, but I'm looking forward to building a new life for myself, one based on honesty and trust. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. The divorce is finally finalized. It was a long and difficult process, but it's over now. Despite Stephen's attempts to hide assets, my lawyer was able to secure a fair settlement for I received half of our marital assets, including a portion of the money from Stephen's hidden accounts and investments. I'm fully settled into my new life now. I'm still teaching and loving every minute of it. I was worried that the gap in my employment would make it hard to get back into the profession, but my skills came back quickly. The financial independence feels amazing after years of being controlled. I've moved into a small apartment of my own and slowly furnishing it the way I want. It's not as big or luxurious as the house I shared with Stephen, but it's mine, and that makes all the difference. Stephen tried to contact me a few times after the divorce was finalized. He said he had started therapy for his sex addiction and wanted to apologize. At first, I ignored his messages, but eventually, I agreed to meet him in a public place. He seemed genuinely remorseful and explained that he was working on himself. I appreciated the gesture, but I made it clear that while I accepted his apology, I didn't want to have any further contact with him beyond what was necessary for finalizing our divorce. I've since blocked his number and all his social media accounts. Rachel, the woman who was pregnant with Stephen's child, reached out to me recently. She had the baby, a little boy. She apologized for her part in the affair, saying Stephen had lied to her too, claiming we were separated. We had a long talk, and I actually feel a sense of camaraderie with her now. We were both deceived by the same man. She's struggling as a single mom, and while I have no obligation to her or the child, I found myself offering her advice and support occasionally. I also met with Olivia, the mother of Stephen's older child. She was shocked to learn that Stephen had kept their son a secret from me throughout our marriage. We talked for hours, and she filled in a lot of blanks about Stephen's past. It was painful to hear, but it helped me realize that Stephen's issues went far beyond what I had imagined. My parents have been incredibly supportive during this transition. They helped me move and get settled in my new place. My dad even repainted the entire apartment for me. They've apologized multiple times for initially pushing me to stay with Stephen, saying they now understand how toxic the situation was. I've started seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of Stephen's betrayal. It's been helpful in processing my emotions and rebuilding my self-esteem. I'm learning to trust my instincts again and to recognize red flags in relationships. Professionally, things are going well. I've taken on some additional responsibilities at school, including leading a new literacy program. It feels good to be valued for my skills and to have control over my career again. I'm not ready to date yet, but I'm hopeful about the future. For now, I'm focusing on myself, my career, my friendships, and my own personal growth. I've rekindled old friendships that had fallen by the wayside during my marriage and have made new friends through a local book club. Financially, I'm doing okay. The settlement from the divorce gave me a good starting point, and I'm learning to budget and save on my own. I've even started a small investment account determined to secure my own financial future. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I missed with Stephen. The controlling behavior, the secretiveness about finances, the sudden trips, and late nights at work. But I don't blame myself anymore. I've learned valuable lessons about trust, independence, and self-worth. There are still tough days. Days when I miss the I thought I had, or when I feel angry about all the lies. But overall, I'm happier and more at peace than I've been in years. I'm rediscovering who I am without Stephen's influence, and I like the person I'm becoming.